Am I the A? I had a one-night stand and she was 8 weeks pregnant. Accidentally, she was my wife's customer. As I reflect on the events that led up to that fateful evening, it's hard not to feel a twinge of what can only be described as predestined irony. My life at that time, though outwardly stable and content, was a carousel of routine and predictability. I was a project manager at a mid-sized ad agency, a job that provided me with a comfortable living but seldom sparked the passion I once had for my career. Each project blended into the next, each deadline just another date on the calendar. Married for 7 years, Ellie and I had settled into the kind of companionship that was comfortable, but, if I'm being honest, increasingly devoid of spark. She was a boutique owner, a career she fell into through a blend of passion for fashion and serendipity. Her store, Ellie's Threads, nestled in the heart of downtown, had become a sanctuary not just for fashion enthusiasts, but for anyone seeking a personal touch, both in service and style. Ellie had a knack for making every customer feel like the only person in the room, which explained why her clientele kept growing mostly by word of mouth. Ellie loved her work, and I admired her for it. Her face would light up with every story she shared about her customers. There was genuine excitement in her voice that I hadn't heard in mine for a long time when talking about my own day-to-day life. Perhaps it was this growing disparity in our professional satisfactions that first wedged a sliver of disconnect between us. She was flourishing, vibrant, and I felt like I was just there, going through the motions, watching the days tick by. It was a Thursday evening when it happened. Ellie was hosting a late-night sale event, something she had been planning for weeks. The excitement had bubbled over at breakfast that morning, her eyes sparkling as she laid out her plans for the displays and special discounts. I remember nodding, inserting the occasional sounds "great honey" into the flow of her enthusiastic chatter, all the while sipping my coffee and feeling an inexplicable hollowness inside. Work that day was more of the same, drowning in emails and phone calls. As the clock neared 6, a co-worker, Dan, popped his head into my office. "Grab a drink?" he suggested with a shrug. The idea was not just appealing, it felt like a lifeline. Ellie wouldn't be home until late, and the thought of another evening alone with my thoughts wasn't particularly enticing. The bar was typical for our city. Dim lighting, a hum of conversations blending into a sort of soothing white noise, the occasional clink of glasses. We found a spot at the bar, and I texted Ellie that I'd be out for drinks and not to wait up. She replied with a heart emoji and a quick good luck with Dan's stories, which managed to pull a brief smile from me. Dan was in the middle of a particularly animated tale about a client when she walked in. Alone, she took a seat a few stools down from us. Something about her was immediately captivating, not just her appearance, but the air of confidence she exuded. She ordered a drink and caught me looking her way. I turned back to Dan, chiding myself for the wandering eye, but curiosity got the better of me. As the evening wore on and Dan's stories became more about his ex-wife than our clients, my attention drifted. I found myself ordering another drink, alone this time, as Dan had left with a shake of his hand and a pat on the back. Now, with space beside me, she moved over, commenting lightly on the quality of the cocktails here as opposed to some other place she knew downtown. We started talking, and it was surprisingly easy. She was visiting from out of town, here on a short business trip. There was an ease to our conversation that I hadn't felt in a long time. A mutual understanding that seemed to click into place without effort. She laughed at my jokes, and I found myself genuinely intrigued by her stories of places she'd visited and the people she'd met. The bar's ambient music faded into a subtle backdrop as our conversation deepened. Her name was Mara. She had an air of someone who had navigated many cities, yet she carried no airs about her travels. Instead, she shared her experiences with a kind of earnestness that was both refreshing and disarming. Each story she told was punctuated by her laughter, a sound that seemed to resonate just at the right frequency to shake me from my usual reserve. As we talked, the initial casualness of our exchange slowly peeled away to reveal a more profound connection. We discussed everything from favorite books and films to our personal philosophies on life and the inevitable question of what happiness truly meant to each of us. Mara had a way of speaking that made you want to listen, her words thoughtful, her demeanor calm, yet full of a passionate energy. It was this energy that drew me in, deeper and deeper, into a dialogue that felt as if it was set apart from the rest of the world. The bar began to thin out, the night getting late, but neither of us made any motion to leave. My phone buzzed intermittently, a reminder of the life I had momentarily stepped away from. But each notification seemed less and less important as the night drew on. I told myself that this was just a conversation, just two people talking, nothing more. But deep down, I knew it was edging into something else, something I hadn't planned but perhaps subconsciously desired. Mara's presence filled the space around us with an intoxicating blend of curiosity and mystery. As she shared a particularly touching story about a sunrise she witnessed in Machu Picchu, I realized I was leaning in, captivated not just by her words, but by her essence. It was a moment of vulnerability, one that didn't go unnoticed. She paused, a soft smile playing on her lips, her eyes locking with mine in a silent acknowledgement of the shift between us. "It's getting late," she finally said, her voice a soft contrast to the fading music. "I should probably head back to my hotel." The statement hung between us, a polite end to an unexpected evening. Yet neither of us moved. The connection, now palpably thick, seemed to hold us there. It was then that I wrestled with my conscience, a silent debate raging within me. I was a married man. I had responsibilities, a partner who trusted me. What was I doing? But then another voice whispered, justifying the pull I felt. Ellie was busy with her life, absorbed in her passions. Was it so wrong for me to find a moment of escapism? Was it so harmful to feel alive just for one night? Mara stood up, breaking our gaze. "This was really nice," she said, gathering her things. I stood too, driven by an impulse I couldn't quite quell. "Let me walk you to your hotel," I offered, my voice steady despite the inner turmoil. The walk was short, the city's night sounds surrounding us, yet the silence between us spoke volumes. Each step felt like a decision, each breath a silent question of what I was doing. When we reached the lobby of her hotel, the finality of the evening loomed before us, yet neither of us seemed ready to let it end. "Would you like to come up for a coffee?" she asked, her invitation casual but loaded with unspoken implications. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, heavy and undeniable. This was the point of no return. I knew what my answer should be, what it would be any other night. But that night, driven by a loneliness I hadn't admitted to myself and a connection that felt almost faded, I broke. "Sure," I said, a part of me surrendering to the night, to the escape, to Mara. It was nearing midnight when we left the bar. The night was crisp, the streets bathed in the orange glow of street lamps. Somehow the decision of what came next didn't need much discussion. It felt like a mutual, unspoken agreement. We ended up at her hotel, a decision that, in the moment, carried a thrill I hadn't felt in years. The elevator ride to her floor was a blur of mixed emotions. Each floor ascended marked a step further, away from the life I knew, from the person I was. When we entered her room, the reality of our actions set in fully. This was no longer just conversation and hypotheticals. It was real, tangible. The next several hours were filled with a flurry of desire and introspection, with a twinge of guilt accompanying each moment of connection. My internal conflict was exacerbated by Mara's kindness, compassion, and lack of expectations. Reality started to creep back in as the night gave way to the first hints of morning. bringing remorse and realization to the experience. Looking back, I recognized the recklessness of it all. It was an escape, a brief moment of stupidity driven by resentment and the privacy the evening provided. But the gravity of my deeds hit as daylight drew near, and I made my way from the motel to the solitude of my home. When I got there, Ellie was still asleep, not realizing the storm that was building quietly above us, a storm sparked by a night that was intended to be meaningless, but ended up being anything but ordinary. The weeks following my indiscretion passed with a deceptive calm that belied the turmoil within me. Meanwhile, Ellie seemed more energized than ever by her work. One evening, as we settled into a rare, quiet moment after dinner, she began talking animatedly about a new customer, Mara, who had quickly become more of a friend than a client. She's just moved here, doesn't really know anyone yet, so I thought maybe we could have her over for dinner, Ellie suggested. Her eyes sparkled with the prospect of playing host to a new friend, and I found myself nodding in agreement, eager to support anything that made her happy. Accordingly, the following Saturday, Ellie busied herself with preparations, her excitement palpable. As for me, I oscillated between helping her and trying to quiet the persistent voice of guilt in my mind. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my reverie. I opened the door and time seemed to stop. There stood Mara, the woman from that night, her eyes wide with equal shock. The air thickened with unspoken recognition. Ellie, oblivious to the silent exchange, swept in with a warm welcome. "Mara, I'm so glad you could make it, and this is my husband, Mark." The introduction forced a facade of normalcy, and I extended a hand, the contact sending a shiver of panic through me. Dinner unfolded like a play where the actors knew their lines too well. Mara was polite, engaging in conversation, yet our eyes occasionally met, heavy with the secrets we carried. Moreover, during a lull in the conversation, Ellie mentioned, "Mara's expecting. Can you believe it? It's been about 8 weeks already." She beamed, her delight in sharing her friend's news evident. My heart plummeted into my stomach. 8 weeks. The timing was damning, the implication clear. Mara caught my gaze, her expression unreadable. The weight of the situation pressed down on me, suffocating. After dinner, I found myself mechanically helping Ellie clean up, my mind racing with the evening's revelations. Mara had excused herself, to the bathroom, and Ellie, humming happily, remarked, "She's wonderful, isn't she? I think she's going to fit right in here." I murmured in agreement, my voice hollow to my ears. The irony that Mara was integrating into our lives in more ways than one was not lost on me. When Mara returned, Ellie suggested we move to the living room for coffee. There, amidst the casual chatter about neighborhood amenities and local events, I excused myself to fetch something from the kitchen, and Mara followed shortly after. Alone, we faced each other, an awkward silence stretching between us. "I didn't know you were—" I began, unable to finish the sentence. Mara looked down at her hands, then back up at me. "I found out after our night," she said quietly. "I'm keeping the baby. It's something I've always wanted, and it feels like the right time." Her voice was steady, her decision clear. I felt as if the room was closing in on me. Does this change? I mean, does Ellie need to know? I stumbled over the words, fear threading through each syllable. Mara shook her head slightly. "I don't see why she needs to know about us. This baby, it's mine, and I'm not asking anything of you." She spoke with a finality that left little room for argument, yet the enormity of keeping such a secret from Ellie weighed heavily on me. Returning to the living room, I was quieter than before, lost in thought over the right course of action. Mara soon made her excuses and left, the door closing softly behind her, echoing like a quiet judgment on my actions. That night, as Ellie and I lay in bed, Her contented sighs contrasted sharply with the storm of anxiety and guilt raging within me. The secret I carried was now twofold, complicated further by the impending arrival of a child that might be mine. The fear of losing. Ellie, the life we built together, and the respect she had for me battled with my conscience, urging me to come clean. Nevertheless, despite my best efforts to justify myself, none of them seemed sufficient to bridge the gap that had appeared in my life overnight. The choice of whether to reveal or keep quiet hovered over me like a pendulum, ready to swing at any time and have disastrous effects. The next day with my couple, as Mara excused herself from the dinner table, claiming a need to freshen up, the silence she left behind was deafening. Ellie chatted about her plans for expanding her boutique, her words floating over me like a distant melody. My mind, however, was trapped in a vice of fear and guilt, fixated on the brief, intense exchange I'd had with Mara in the kitchen. Returning to the living room, Ellie was animated, discussing community events and possible collaborations with local artisans. Mara rejoined us, her demeanor calm, betraying none of the storm that had just unfolded between us. She listened intently, nodding and smiling at appropriate intervals, but her eyes occasionally flicked my way, a silent reminder of the conversation that was far from over. After dessert, Ellie suggested we enjoy some coffee on the back porch. The night was clear, the stars a tapestry of light against the dark sky. The casual setting did little to ease the tension I felt. Mara excused herself early, citing a long day ahead. Ellie, understanding as always, walked her to the door with promises to catch up soon. Left alone, the weight of the evening pressed uncomfortably around me. The house was quiet after Ellie returned, the soft clink of her placing the coffee cups in the sink, echoing through the stillness. She sensed my unease. "Is everything okay?" "You've been quiet tonight," she inquired, her voice laced with concern. "I think we need to talk." I started, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy, each one a step towards an abyss I was terrified to confront. Ellie turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression shifting to one of apprehension. "What's wrong?" I led her to the living room, gesturing for her to sit. My legs felt like lead as I paced in front of her, each step a Herculean effort. Tonight was hard. "Mara, she's not just a customer, Ellie." Ellie's brow furrowed, confusion and worry mingling in her eyes. "What do you mean?" I stopped pacing, facing her, the truth clawing at the edge of my tongue. A few weeks ago, I met someone, at a bar. It was just once, but it was a mistake. A big mistake, I confessed, my voice cracking under the strain of my confession. Ellie's face was drained of color. "And Mara is—" I nodded, the admission feeling like a physical blow. Yes, she's the woman, from that night. And she's pregnant, Ellie. 8 weeks. The room spun as I watched the impact of my words hit her. Ellie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the wood floor. "How could you?" Her voice was a whisper, but it bore the weight of a scream. "I'm so sorry, Ellie. It was a moment of weakness. A terrible mistake. Mara said the baby is hers, and she doesn't want anything from me. She wasn't supposed to be anyone we knew." Ellie wrapped her arms around herself, as if holding together the pieces of her shattered security. "And you thought you'd just keep this from me? Live a lie?" I shook my head, desperate to explain, to make her see the remorse that was eating me alive. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would destroy everything. I thought—" "You thought what? That it's okay to betray me? That I wouldn't find out?" Her voice rose, each word edged with hurt and disbelief. "I don't know, Ellie. I was scared. I still am. I don't want to lose you." My own voice was ragged, strained with the fear of the very real possibility of losing her. Ellie sank back into the chair, her eyes staring blankly ahead, not really seeing the room or me. I need some time to think about this, to understand how I feel. I need you to give me some space right now. Of course, I replied, my heart sinking as the distance between us expanded with her words. Take all the time you need. I'm here when you're ready to talk. She didn't respond, and I retreated to our bedroom, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Lying in our bed, I stared at the ceiling, wrestling with the enormity of what I'd done. The silence of the house was oppressive. Each creak and whisper of wind, a reminder of the fragility of the life I'd built with Ellie. Confessing had lifted a weight, but it had also set in motion a series of events that I could no longer control. Ellie's trust in me was shattered, and whether it could be rebuilt remained a question mark hanging over us, dense and foreboding. The guilt of my betrayal, now fully disclosed, was a specter that would haunt the corners of our home, perhaps indefinitely. As I lay there, the hours stretching into a sleepless expanse, I realized that coming clean was only the first step. The journey to possibly mending our relationship, if Ellie could ever forgive me, was likely to be long and fraught with challenges. However, I had no choice but to follow this road since I still loved her, and I hoped that one day she would feel the same way about me. The longest night of my life was the one I spent admitting to Ellie. With each silent minute that went by, I felt the distance between us grow as I laid in our bed next to her. She had her back to me, and although we were only a few inches apart, she appeared very far away. My heart raced with a mix of relief at being able to share my secret and fear for the days that lay ahead. The silence in the room contrasted sharply with the disarray in my head. Morning brought no solace. Ellie was up before dawn, her movements around the bedroom deliberate and quiet, avoiding any unnecessary interaction. At breakfast, the air was thick with things unsaid. She poured coffee with a mechanical precision, her eyes fixed on the task, not once meeting mine. The clink of the spoon against the cup echoed like a siren in the tense silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but cold. I've been thinking all night. I don't know if I can get past this, Mark, but I need something from you if I'm even going to consider it. Her words hung heavy between us. What do you need? I asked, my voice hoarse, bracing for her conditions. I want you to talk to Mara. I want the pregnancy to be dealt with. It's the only way I might forgive this. The only way we might have a chance. Her eyes met mine then, filled with a tumultuous mix of pain and determination because she wanted Mara to have an abortion. The condition hit me harder than I anticipated. The idea of influencing Mara's decision about her pregnancy was a line I had never imagined crossing. Yet the alternative was losing Ellie, the thought of which was unbearable. I'll talk to her, I murmured, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Ellie nodded, her expression unreadable, and left for work without another word. The day stretched out interminably. I was haunted by Ellie's condition, my thoughts a tangle of ethical dilemmas and personal desires. By the time I called Mara, my voice was barely more than a whisper, laden with the weight of the situation. Mara's reaction was as expected, shocked and hurt. I can't believe you'd even suggest this. After assuring me it was my choice, she said, her voice tight with emotion. The conversation was brief, and she hung up with a definitive, I'm keeping the baby, Mark. You don't get to have a say in this. The finality of her decision left me reeling. I had to return to Ellie with nothing to offer but the truth. That evening, as we sat across from each other in our living room, the distance between us felt insurmountable. I spoke to Mara. I started, the heaviness of my failure bearing down on me. She's made her decision. She's keeping the baby. I couldn't persuade her otherwise. Ellie's reaction was a complex tapestry of anger, sadness, and resignation. So that's it then, she said quietly, her voice quivering slightly. You've really done it, haven't you? ruined everything we had for a moment of, what? Excitement? Escape. I had no answers that could soothe the wounds, no words that could mend the broken trust. I'm so sorry, Ellie. I never wanted any of this. I was selfish, and I've hurt you beyond what I can ever repair. But I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right, if you'll let me. Ellie shook her head, a tear escaping down her cheek. I need time, Mark. I need space to think about what I want, about what's best for me. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way. I don't know if I want to. The following weeks were a blur of tension and tentative interactions. Ellie moved into the guest room, and our conversations were brief, limited to necessities. I respected her need for space, all the while grappling with my remorse and the fallout of my actions. I researched therapists, arranged counseling sessions for myself, and left notes for Ellie, each one an apology, a plea for a chance to rebuild. Slowly, we started attending couples therapy. Each session was emotionally charged, a painful unpacking of years of neglected issues and recent betrayals. Ellie's pain was palpable, and each word she spoke about her hurt was a dagger to my heart. I went through a whirlwind of emotions throughout this period. I was scared of losing Ellie all the time and was overcome with remorse. I continued to attempt to make things right, even though it seemed like a lot would never be enough since I still loved her. I clung to the belief that we could mend our relationship and get back together if we were open, honest, and patient. I was prepared for the difficult road ahead, no matter how long it took, to mend Ellie's relationship. After I told Ellie the truth, we were both confused and upset about what came next. To help us, we started having regular meetings with a counselor. It made us see things more clearly, but it was also really hard. Every week, we started to see how we hadn't been talking to each other properly, and there were things we were both angry about but never said. The lady counselor was kind, but also straightforward. She helped us talk about tough topics, like whether we should push Mara to make a certain choice about her pregnancy. Ellie was torn emotionally and morally, and she wasn't sure what to think. She asked her friends, her family, and even people on the internet for advice. The advice she got was all different and seemed to confuse her more. I could tell just by looking at her that it was tough on her. After much thinking, Ellie decided not to interfere with Mara's decisions. Meanwhile, Ellie's work life needed her attention too. Mara was not just a client now, but she frequently visited Ellie's boutique. I saw how Ellie handled this professionally, despite the personal feelings she had. She kept her feelings separate from her work and treated Mara kindly. This was a clear sign of Ellie's strength and good character. I felt a mix of sadness and pride watching her. Ellie suggested a temporary break about 6 months after I was honest with her. The decision broke our hearts, but Ellie thought it was the best thing to do. I moved to an apartment a few blocks away, and we had some rules for how we would communicate. These included regular check-ins, therapy sessions, as well as time to be alone and heal. During this separation, I faced the consequences of my actions. I had hurt Ellie, disrupted Mara's life, and affected all of our futures. I spent my alone time reading about trust, speaking with the counselor by myself, and writing in a journal. It made me really confront who I needed to become. As the separation neared its 1-year mark, one rainy afternoon, as we met for coffee, in a quiet cafe, Ellie broached the subject I had been dreading. The sound of the rain tapping against the window provided a somber backdrop to our conversation. "Mark, I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice steady but with an undeniable gravity. "This year apart has given me a lot of clarity, and as much as it pains me to say this, I don't think I can move past what happened. I don't feel the same about us anymore." Her words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The future I had been tentatively hopeful for crumbled in an instant. "I think it's best if we start thinking about divorce," she continued. "I need to start a new chapter for myself, one where I don't have to constantly fight shadows of the past. The Shock of her decision hit me with overwhelming force. Despite our efforts and the faint hope that we might reconcile fully, the reality was starkly different. Ellie's expression was one of resolve, tinged with sadness. She had wrestled with this decision, and her conclusion was not made lightly. The shock of her decision hit me with overwhelming force. Despite our efforts and the faint hope that we might reconcile fully, the reality was starkly different. Ellie's expression was one of resolve, tinged with sadness. She had wrestled with this decision, and her conclusion was not made lightly. "I understand," I managed to say, though my voice was thick with emotion. "I hate that it's come to this, but I respect your decision. You deserve happiness, Ellie, even if it's not with me." Moving forward was tough but important. We had deep talks about how to split up fairly and by the law, taking into account the property we owned together and the life we had built. Ellie clearly wanted to make the process as easy as possible, showing that in spite of everything, we still respected each other. Returning home after our conversation felt different. The apartment was no longer just a temporary space, but a symbol of the finality of our split. I found myself reflecting deeply on the consequences of my actions. The pain I had caused Ellie, the disruption to Mara's life, and the end of what had once been a promising marriage were all results of my poor choices. We made a point to continue therapy, even if not as often, and Ellie went back to focusing on her boutique. Ellie and Mara were not close again, but they still had a professional relationship until Mara moved for work. During the ensuing months, as we navigated the divorce proceedings, I continued my personal therapy sessions. These became crucial for me to understand my actions better and to learn from them. I explored topics of trust, commitment, and personal growth extensively, committed to never repeating the same mistakes. The process of our divorce came to an end quietly and without any disagreements. Ellie and I said goodbye with deep sadness, but we also respected each other. We both changed because of what happened. Ellie was more dedicated to forge her own way in life now, while I was left to make sense of the past and rebuild my future, now knowing more about myself and the importance of being honest and faithful. Though those were difficult lessons, I was in need of them. I discovered that true love requires more than just liking someone. It also requires honesty, respect, and a level of dedication that I was unable to provide when it meant most. Even though our divorce was finalized when the papers were signed, that moment will always serve as a reminder of the costs of treachery and the arduous process of putting things right later. As I look back, I realize I learned a lot. I figured out how fragile trust is and how hard it is to rebuild once it's broken. Faithfulness and truthfulness are not just words. They are about what you actually do constantly. Now more than ever, I understand how much a relationship needs open and direct communication. Going through this tough time has changed me. I'm not the same person who made the mistake and risked everything important. Instead, I've become a more conscious, more cautious, and more resolute person because of this experience. Even though Ellie and I went through a terrible situation, and we can't predict what's going to happen in the future, we promise to face it together, showing our love, strength, and the silent promise to honor the vows that we once took lightly. Years have passed since Ellie and I finalized our divorce, and life has marched on in ways I never anticipated. Ellie has thrived in her independence. Her boutique, Ellie's Threads, has expanded into an online platform, blending her keen fashion sense with an intuitive grasp of digital marketing. She's become a well-respected figure in the local business community, frequently invited to speak at events and seminars. Last I heard, she remained single, dedicating herself to her career and personal growth. Her success is a testament to her resilience and strength, qualities that I always admired, even more so now from a distance. As for myself, the journey has been one of profound introspection and change. Following our separation, Mara and I tried to co-parent, a decision born from necessity rather than romance. Our son, now a curious and energetic toddler, is a constant reminder of the consequences of my actions. Mara and I are not together. Our relationship is strictly platonic, focused solely on raising our child in a stable and loving environment. This arrangement has taught me more about responsibility and commitment than I ever learned before. Lessons that I deeply value. I've continued to work in the same company, but with a new perspective on my career and personal life. The ordeal forced me to reassess not just my personal relationships, but also my professional life. I've taken steps to ensure that my work is not just on a financial level, but also enriches my life and aligns with my values. My days are a blend of work, fatherhood, and continuous learning, with an emphasis on personal integrity and transparency. The impact of my past actions still reverberates through the lives of those I care about. The pain I caused Ellie is something I carry with me every day. It serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the importance of honesty. With Mara, our relationship has evolved into one of mutual respect and teamwork as we navigate the challenges and joys of parenting. Reflecting on everything, the greatest lesson has been understanding the ripple effect of one's actions. The choices I made not only altered the course of my life, but also affected the lives of Ellie, Mara, and most importantly, our son. This awareness has reshaped how I approach every decision, every relationship, and how I live my life day to day. As I think about what's ahead, I plan to be someone my son can depend on and admire. I want to teach him important values like being honest, accepting our weaknesses, and being good and fair through the way I behave. Life continues to teach me new things through its many complications and difficulties. I'm thankful for the lessons I've learned from messing up and the opportunity to correct them little by little each day. The path I'm on is not over yet, but I am dedicated to continue it while being real and mindful. I hope to fix the past and work towards a better future for everyone affected. Edit. As someone who listened to the story and was allowed to upload it on this channel, I also asked for permission to comment on his story at the end. Honestly, he is someone who should be rejected from this life, LOL. It's impossible to cause such a thing and just say a few words to ease his feelings. The way he stood from afar, watching his wife develop and shouldering everything alone, made me feel so sorry. I admire Ellie. If you have the same opinion as me, comment number 1 or yes and no number 0, then add your personal opinion. I am sure that the owner of this article will read and update it regularly. Thank you everyone for listening until now and always enjoying the stories on my channel. Kiss kiss.